Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, May 23rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 99 days. Yes, we are under 100 days to go until college football season. The game against Michigan in 190 days. If you are planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. Heading into Memorial Day weekend, which means we are heading into summer. That is food truck season. So it is Grateful Griddle season. It is also time for us to start looking forward to this year's Ohio State football team as we are headed under now 100 days to the start of the season. And today's show, I wanted to talk about some of the more underrated players on this year's Ohio State team. And I'm going to, one of them, two of them already have some starting experience, but I feel like they're probably not being talked about quite enough. There's plenty of talk about Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, and those guys are fantastic, certainly. And there's plenty of other guys that are going to be very, very effective players that we talk about a bunch. But I think there were five guys I wanted to talk about that were probably not getting talked about quite enough. We're going to be doing that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, it's a little weird for me to be doing the underrated Buckeye show and not start it with Ty Hamilton's name, because it feels like we've been saying Ty Hamilton, the most underrated Buckeye, since he was, I don't know, like about a junior in Pickerington. But he is off to the NFL, so we're gonna have some new names to talk about. The first of those names, however, is another guy from Pickerington. That's Lorenzo Styles Jr. And he's someone who I think we've been hearing his name for so long, going back to high school, and then he was going, wide receiver at Notre Dame, and then he came to Ohio State, and then he just kind of he spent a year sort of off in the wilderness almost, and then played in the dime last year. But I think from what we've seen, I think he's going to be much more effective at that nickel position than most people are talking about. And it's just very easy to get overshadowed with as much talent as there is in that Ohio State secondary.
For sure. And you generally think about the safeties and the corners first, and everybody knows Caleb Downs. I wrote about Lorenzo Styles on Tuesday, and from talking to him back in the spring. And I think it's very interesting because when we saw him, he was almost exclusively with the ones, unless he was getting a break. There's been no, you haven't heard anything concern-wise with him. And so, he's a guy that I had questions about for sure, because we haven't seen him do this yet. But the thing is, as he said back in the spring, I have done it. I was Jordan Hancock's backup, so I know all of the stuff that Jordan does, and whether it's playing nickel or dropping back, playing safety, playing, whatever. And so he understands all of that, and it seemed like, he embraced it this spring, but he's playing a bit of a different scheme, and will continue to play a bit of a different scheme depending on what Matt Patricia wants. So he's focused as well on I'm not trying to be Jordan Hancock. I got to be the nickel for this defense, because it's going to be a little bit of a different defense than the one last year. So he's got his head in the right place. And what I liked about some of the things that he said in the spring is when Lathan Ransom basically called him the most confident guy on the team. And he said, well, you got to be a little delusional to come to Ohio State as a receiver and say, I'm playing corner now, and to come to Ohio State at all and play corner, you have to be a little bit delusional in that, there's a lot of talent here that's very difficult to get on the field. And to think that you're going to be one of the few, yes, there's confidence. You need that. You need to be good, but also you need to have this idea, yeah. And he's I don't want to say I'm delusional. I want to prove Lathan Ransom. I want to show to him that I'm not delusional, but you still have to have some of that, maybe call it bravado or just, innocence, to think that, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, he's I think going to be playing a surprisingly important role for the Buckeyes this fall. So he was the first name I wrote down. The second name I wrote down, this is one where I don't know, I may get some pushback from you in terms of, this is a guy who people talk about, but it just feels like he's just not someone who gets talked about enough. That is wide receiver Carnell Tate. And when you are in the wide receiver room, and Jeremiah Smith is also in the wide receiver room, he just kind of sucks all of the oxygen out of the conversation. Everyone wants to talk about Jeremiah Smith because, gestures vaguely towards everything Jeremiah Smith has done in the last 12 months. And yeah, you're all nodding going, oh yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. Carnell Tate, I go back to Marvin Harrison talking about Carnell Tate being ahead of where Marvin Harrison was at one point during his first year. And Carnell Tate had a really good second year at Ohio State. But when you're the wide receiver out there with Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith, it's very easy to go, he is the part of the Gilligan's Island thing where it's and the rest. Like that was Carnell Tate last year. It just feels like he doesn't quite get talked about as much as he should.
Well, and the rest, I do think this season they will add Professor Marianne and Carnell Tate to the theme song to make sure people know about him. And, when we talked to him last year, he was kind of a quiet and subdued guy and has come out of his shell more as he's played. And we talked to him this spring. He's a bit of a different guy now that he knows he's being relied upon, and he knows that Emeka is gone. He's got to be a leader for this team. Like he and Brandon Innes are the oldest guys. He's the most experienced guy out there now. He's played more than anybody else. So he's got to be that leader. And, I am happy for him. I'm starting to see him on mock drafts, and I've seen the draft people already talking about him as a first rounder. So they at least understand that there's somebody there. I don't know how much they've watched him. It's just an understanding of this is the next guy in line. This is the next draft eligible Buckeye wide receiver. So just go ahead and put him there. That's the free space. And I think we will see a lot from him this year. And he's coming off of a 50 catches, 700 yards. Like that's a pretty darn good year. 20 years ago, that would probably be a top 5 or top 10 season in Ohio State history. And now you're like, oh yeah, Carnell Tate. And the thing is, if you put the wide receivers all at tables of autograph seekers, I don't know if does he have the second deepest line or is it the third deepest line? So that's the kind of attention that he's not gotten yet that he will soon get, I think.
Yeah, I think he's someone who you're going to hear his name a lot more this year. Last year, you kind of heard it during that Northwestern game when he had a couple touchdowns in his return to his hometown of Chicago. And then the rest of the year, it was kind of like, oh yeah, every once in a while, Carnell Tate makes this really incredible play. But let's talk more about Jeremiah Smith. And I get it. I understand. But the next one, it's a tight end, Tony. And I've gone back and forth between two different guys. It's either Will Casmmer or Bennett Christian. And I feel like I can make an interesting argument for either one. I think I'm going to go with Will Casmmer because we talk about him, but he missed a chunk of that season last year, did not play in 4 games, barely played in that Oregon game. So there's a 5-game stretch right in the middle of the season where he was just kind of gone. And you look at his snap counts during the course of the year, and I don't know that people really think about this. You think about G. Scott, and G. Scott had these big plays, and the first play of the Rose Bowl, G. Scott has this big long reception, and G. Scott had a couple really crucial receptions in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. Tony, which tight end played more snaps in the last 3 games of the season? Was it G. Scott or Will Casmmer?
Well, I'm going to assume, and actually, as I'm looking at the numbers right now, yes, it is Will Casmmer, and I'm with you. He was one of the 5 names that came to my mind. But then also, as you're saying, I don't know if it should be Will Casmmer or Bennett Christian. I'm like, well, it's probably Bennett Christian because nobody talks about him. We talk about last year, G. Scott, obviously, Will Casmmer, Jelani Thurman, and now it's Max Clare, Will Casmmer, Jelani Thurman. No, don't forget Bennett Christian, who became that 3rd tight end last year when the Buckeyes needed him. And so I think either one of those guys is perfect for this list. Though to throw in your number 3 tight end is maybe a little inside baseball, but Tom, I don't know if you've heard, but if you've checked your calendar lately, it is the year of the tight end.
I have heard that. Now my calendar still says Smarch, but I'm sure once the correctly printed one comes in, you know what? We're going to take those 2 guys, and those 2 guys are both going to be on there. So there you go. We're through 4 of them then, because you know what? Year of the tight end, we're going to count 2 tight ends there. So Lorenzo Styles, Carnell Tate, Will Casmmer, and Bennett Christian. How about number 5, Tony? And this is a guy who is another person who was a starter last year. We're going to look at the offensive line. Austin Sevelt. Austin Sevelt made some really big starts for them, moved around a decent amount. He played both guard positions at different times last year. Now he's going to be moving out to tackle. Was one of 3 guys named an Iron Buckeye this spring. All that, and then if you ask people which offensive lineman are they really excited about this year, I don't know. I think Austin Sevelt might be 3rd or 4th on that list because everyone, you're going to be excited about Ethan Onyeonwa. You're going to be excited about, hey, Luke Montgomery, in-state guy, boy, he's really and Carson Hinsman, boy, did he have a great. And Tegra Shabola was honorable mention All Big Ten last year, and then it's like you might have Austin Sevelt be the last guy people name, but it feels like if he's going to, feels like he's in a decent spot at that right tackle spot. And that's going to be a really, really crucial position on the offensive line. And just the flexibility he brings, I know he gets talked about, but I don't think it's nearly enough.
Yeah, and I think we would agree, and we know that Carson Hinsman is going to be a starter on this offensive line. But the only guy that Ryan Day has said he's going to be starting is Austin Sevelt. Like, when talking about this offensive line, I mean, we assume it'll be, we've already talked about what we assume it'll be. But when Ryan Day talked about Austin Sevelt, it's like, I'm not sure exactly what position he'll be at, but he's going to be one of the five. And I don't know that he said that for anybody else, even though we know there are some. But when Ryan Day is like, no, he's going to be out there, and nobody really talks about him like that, because it's like, well, he's still searching for a home. And, well, I think he's probably found it. But the other thing is, he's like a hermit crab, Tom. He can live in any home. He can make anything a home and make it feel lived in. And I like that one. I think he's such a luxury for an offensive line, and a comfortable luxury, not one of those fancy rooms that you're not allowed to sit in. This is like you can live in, like I said, you can live in it. And it's a luxury, and it's one that I honestly would love to know if they knew he would be as trustworthy as early as he was in his career.
Yeah, I think that he has been a pleasant surprise for them. I think baseball scouts talk about makeup, which is just basically how hard of a worker are you and how disciplined are you? And, you win the Iron Buckeye, and people talk about you as one of the strongest players on the team so early in your career. That tells you are putting in the work, and that's how you get further faster than people probably would have expected. And I certainly think he was certainly further faster than I expected in his Ohio State career. So those were my five. Did you have any that you thought, I bet he's going to say this, and I have disappointed you once again?
Well, I still think, I don't think people give Sonny Styles enough credit. And when I say people, I mean a segment of the Ohio State fan base. I think they don't give him his due. Really, I'd love to see what happens on the defensive line to figure out what's going on there. Is like, did we not talk about him enough? But no, I think you did it pretty well. You had basically the same names that I did. I wish I could complain more. I'd say maybe Davis Nigbinosin, because again, but this is, is it they get criticized too much, or they've earned their criticism, but maybe this year they won't earn as much. So it's like, hey, no, honest, I think he's going to be pretty good this year. Like when people were, some Buckeye fans were like disappointed that Damon Arnett came back for his final year. It's like, well, actually, this is a good thing, and it was. So let him live, I say, Tom.
Yeah, I had Caden McDonald written down at one point, thought about, he feels like he's going to play a bigger role, and we talk about him, but he's going to take, I think, a pretty significant step forward. I had Jalen McLean and Malik Hartford both written down at one point, because it feels like one or both of them is going to take a major step forward, and quite possibly both. I think you're going to see a decent rotation at safety. Malik Hartford in particular, he was starter adjacent as a true freshman at points in 2023, and then just kind of got lost for a little bit last year behind Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs.
Can I throw one last thing? The most underrated player in the nation, Tom? Arch Manning.
Yeah, well, you did just list Sonny Styles as an underrated player. So listen, this is not the first time you have. It was not the boldest thing you've ever said, but that's okay. He's both very good players. So yeah, we will see them both together on the field in 99 days as the Buckeyes take on Texas to open the season. We will be there for that. We will be there for all the fun stuff happening between now and then as well. Busy summer. Official visit season kicking off now. So it's going to be a very busy month in recruiting. Got summer camps coming up at Ohio State all through June. Of course, in July, we got Big Ten Media Days out in Vegas, and then fall camp starts in early August, and the season is just around the corner. So we hope to spend the next 99 days and much beyond that with you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. We got Mark and Berm covering recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well, all to make you a smarter football fan. That is all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We will talk to you next week.